Module 9, Music Theory through Singing. We will be doing 1 Beethoven piece and 2 Mozart pieces. We'll be first analyzing chords, then the phrases, and then the cadences. Sol, fa, mi, re, do, mi, la. Mi is an anacrusis, so a passing tone. Mi, la, do, mi, do, la, chord 1, G minor. And then you continue on in G minor with passing tones A, la, mi, la, do, mi, la, no, mi, la, do, la, mi. That is chord 1 with a G on the bottom. We're in minor, so it's 1 minor, chord 1. And then still G minor with the passing tone A. And then the bass arpeggiates the G minor. Mi, la, sol, fa, mi, re, do, mi, si, T, C, mi, chord 5, D, mi, la, do, chord 1, G minor, sol, fa, mi, re, do, mi, si, T, C, mi, chord 5, D. I would say this entire first line is 1 phrase. And then I would also say, because it goes 1 to 5, it is a half cadence. That is the first line. For the second line, the A that started the last line is the pickup or anacrusis to this following line. T, mi, T, C, mi, si, T, C, mi, C, T, mi. That would be chord 5, D. Mi, si, the E's are the passing tone. Mi, si, T, mi. This would also be 5. But that C there, to explain that, you would make it a 5/7 because it's D major with a C right below it, That makes it 5/7. Then that leads to mi, mi, fa, fa, la, do, la, fa, fa, la, do, la, fa. That's chord 4. Fa, la, do, la, fa. That would be oh no, that would be chord 6. Fa, la, do, la, fa. And that would be E flat major with a passing tone of the C's and the A's. And then there's a 7th in here, but because it is the second half of a 16th, I'll consider it just a passing tone. You could say it's a 7th, but it's not even on a beat, and it's so minuscule that it really doesn't count as a 7th. So, fa, mi, re, do, mi, la, 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 re, fa, fa, la, fa, re. That would be chord 4. Well, actually, that would be 2/6. It's subdominant function, and that would be A diminished. It's in the tone. So, fa, mi, re, do, mi, la, do, la, mi, chord 1. In 6/4, 1/6/4, G minor, mi, C, T, C, mi, goes to chord 5. It's a dominant function, D major, la, 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 mi, la, la, do, mi, do, la. Chord 1, G minor. The A is the passing tone, and that arpeggiates again. Now, it is going from a 5 to a 1, so that makes it an authentic cadence. Now, whether it's perfect or imperfect is if the melody or the soprano line ends on the tonic, or normally do in major or la in minor. Since we're in G minor and the soprano part ends on a G, it is a perfect, authentic cadence. Okay, now for it going into major. And you could also have seen there that it was a dominant function to a subdominant function to a dominant function to a tonic function. And at the end here, you can see that right here, you have an anacrusis of D's. for this, I have to fix this. Okay. Oh, going the other direction. Okay. So for this, it has now modulated from G minor to G major. There's one sharp rather than two flats. So since we are in G major, G is do, and the D is so. So, fa, mi, re, do, so, fa, mi, re, do, so. So this would be so, and this is a B, so, mi, so. Now, that is in the beginning, because it's just D and mi, D and B, so mi, so, that it would be a third, but since you have this G down here, do, mi, so, it fills the triad. So this entire first section, first couple notes, is the G major, or the one chord, with the passing tone of the A in the bass and the C's in the treble. And it's the same for the rest of the measure, with the A and the C being the passing tone. You have D, F sharp, and C. So, fa, mi, re, do, mi. So, T. So, T. Fa. So, T, fa. In here, but that is a passing tone because it's all going downward in similar motion. The next chord, so, T, re, T, so, chord 5, D major with a passing tone of B's, and I would also say the E and the G because they're on the Taka, D, Mi. They're on the Mi, and it's not a strong beat at all. And then it just goes so, fi, so, and the fi is on the mi, taka di mi of a beat, so that is also a passing tone. Let me just fix the stand. All right, and then the next chord, so, fa, mi, re, do, so, do, so, fa, mi, re, do, 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 so, do, do, mi, put the octave below, mi, do, mi, and this is E natural, which would be mi, do, ti, la, do, mi, do, la, which is chord 6 and E minor. with a passing tone of the D, which then it becomes re, do, 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 ti, la, so, fa, 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 la, do, la, fa, chord 4, chord 4, and that would be C major, which goes straight to do, re, do, 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 mi, mi is in the bass, mi, so, mi, do. So it would be first inversion, 1 chord, so 1, 6, and that would be G major. Re, re, fa, re, re. So that would be 2 chord. Re, fa, and then this is la. Re, fa, la, fa, re. There's 2. And goes to the 4 chord. Re, fa, la, fa, re. So that's all a subdominant function with passing tones G. That would be A minor. You could also analyze this as re, do, do, fa, 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 la, do, do, la, fa, chord 4, major C, these, to where the G's aren't a passing tone anymore. It would depend on how fast or slow you take it. The tempo really depends on how in depth you take these chords. For a very fast tempo, you'll just hear this whole thing as the beats 2 and 3 you'll hear as C major with the C, G, A minor, C. You'll hear a subdominant function. So, but if you take it slowly, you'll hear the different chords. And then the last one is do, do, so, 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 ti, re, ti, so, chord 5, and that would be D, with the passing tones as the G's. And then you take the G's, re, do, do, mi, do, and that would be chord 1. Now right here, this C could be a D7 on that last section, so you could call it a 5/7 D7 to a G, but it also depends on the tempo, how fast you actually take it. For this phrase, it would be this entire phrase, as in the second line was the entire second line as a phrase, and the first line was the entire first line as a phrase. What you'll see in much music, many classical pieces, is 4-measure phrases. That is a very common thing. And also, since we had 2 phrases of minor, this one is in major. The major one really wouldn't necessarily overlap with the minor one. So you wouldn't have half a major, half a minor phrase. So we did the chords, we did the phrasing, now the cadence. Now I said how if it ends on 1, if it goes 5 to 1, that makes it an authentic cadence. Perfect would be ending on do in the soprano or melodic part, and imperfect would be if it doesn't end on do. Since it is ending on do, it would be a perfect, authentic cadence. And that is the Beethoven piece for music theory through singing. Since I already analyzed the Beethoven piece with you and how to analyze it, such as singing each pitch, learning the solfege to each pitch, which pitches are in the chord, and then what chord that would make. Starting with the Roman numeral analysis, and then using the actual letter names, chord progressions on top, also known as guitar chords. And then we did phrasing, and then we did cadences. So instead of going through that whole process again for the other 2 Mozart pieces, I have analyzed it while singing, and I'm just going to explain each chord and why it's that way to you guys. Now, sing when you actually do this so that you hear it all in your head. I'm just going to explain it. I've already sung and everything. We're in the key of D major or B minor. We didn't know yet, but you can see by the starting on the Ds and that it doesn't have any accidentals. It will probably be in the tone set of D major. So it starts out arpeggiating D, Fis, A, D, Fis, A in the bass, and then you have D, Fis, A, and D, which is all part of chord 1. So it's 1 with D in the top. Same thing happens in measure 2, D, chord 1. And then you have A, E, A, or so, re, so, and then you have so T, you have T right here in the tenor line, you could say, and then a G in the top line. Now you could have said it's A, but with all the G's, you would believe that it's the 7th. And you can hear that when you sing it, that it's definitely a 7th. So I did 5, 7, A7. Then it goes back to 1, arpeggiated Ds. The C goes up, the T goes to Do, the leading tone, up. And then Mi, Re, Do, it comes down to Do. Or to Mi, it comes down to Mi, which is on chord 1 or D. Now I've done the chords and Roman numeral analysis, and this entire line, the first 4 measures and the pickup, is the first phrase. So now we got to figure out what cadence it is or not. Since the soprano line or the melodic line goes so, fa, mi, re, do, so, fa, mi, that ends on mi, not do. So it's not a perfect authentic cadence, it's an imperfect authentic cadence, or an IAC, imperfect authentic cadence. Next, we come down to the second line. Arpeggiates the D major chord again, the first chord, like it did in measure 1. It repeats again, just like measure 2, in measure 6. And then here, it goes A, G, A, G, A in the bass. So, fa, so, fa, so. And this is in all in the chord A, but those G's in the bass, how would you explain them? They could be considered passing tones, but if you sing it yourself and you listen to it in the A7, just like measure 3, it mirrors itself in measure 7, to where it is a 5/7 A7 chord. And then it goes back to D major 1. And this entire thing is its own phrase, but let's see what kind of cadence it is. It goes mi, re, do. So mi, re, mi, so fa, mi, re, do, do. Soprano part ends with do. So it ends in do, which means that it is a perfect authentic cadence. Now, we learned in class, perfect authentic ends on tonic. It normally goes 5 to tonic, dominant tonic, 5 to 1. Soprano or melodic part dictates whether it's perfect or imperfect. Perfect if it's do, imperfect if it's not. And then we also have plagal cadence, which is 4 to 1, which is like the amen cadence. You have the half cadence, which is anything to 5. It normally happens like right here. You could consider this like 2 phrases, but it's not because there's no rest here, and you haven't really created conflict there at all. And if you listen to it, it's not a half cadence right there. And then the last cadence is a deceptive cadence, or a 5 to 6, or like the minor. So it would be like G to C major would be like perfect or imperfect authentic cadence, but G to A minor would be a deceptive cadence. Okay? For the rest of the piece, this chord is 5, 7, 6 because you have E, G, A with G. Now E is in the bass, so when doing the chords, you put a slash and then the E because that is the bass note. What comes after the slash dictates what's the bass note. And then it's A because it has A, E, and C sharp in there, in this whole thing. This first measure is A7, A, C sharp, E, G. Now, I just put A7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 6 because of the inversion, because E being on the bottom, and then C sharp being on the bottom. The interval is a 7th and a 6th. Okay, and then after the A, or the dominant function, it goes back to the tonic function, which is 1, which is D major, and deceptively goes to, but it's not a deceptive cadence, but it goes to its relative minor, B minor, with D, Fis, and B, with D in the bass. So it's B minor / D. Next is E, G sharp, or G and B, with a passing tone of the C, which makes it a 2/7 because we're in D. E is 2. It's the 7th because it starts on D, and normally the downbeat of a measure really dictates a chord, to where E7 with a passing tone of a C creates this chord, continually going down in contrary motion, to where it's so fa mi re do ti la so fi so. All this is going upward, that is coming down. And then this right here ends with an A chord with the passing tone of B and D back to the A chord. Now the bass line keeps moving, so there's only rest in the top. So that would become a phrase since it's a rest in the melodic line, like a significant rest. This catch breath is not a significant rest for this cadence. To describe this cadence, it ends on so or 1. Anything that goes to 5 is a half cadence. Coming down here, I wrote G, F sharp minor, E minor 7th, because those are the thirds. For a chord, if you have the first and the third, you have a quality of a chord. So you can actually state a chord. You don't know the third note, but you can infer what the third note is. So if we built a triad G, B, D, F sharp, A, C sharp, and then E, G, B, that would be the chord progression that I wrote, with the D in the treble being the 7th of the E minor 7th. That is just, those could all be considered passing tones because you really don't have anything above it to analyze, and it's all a sequence going downward to the following line of the arpeggiated tonic chord again. So down here it goes down back to D, arpeggiated just like the beginning, just like the first measure and the fifth measure. And then it comes here from D to G major with a G, D, and a passing tone of an E, or like for like a pretend E minor chord. But it's not E minor yet because the G chord's coming down, it comes down to the E chord, which is 2/6, so it's a subdominant function with the 4 and the 2/6. The whole measure is subdominant, so it's 1 to subdominant. So tonic to subdominant right here goes from G, E minor, and then comes to D with A in the bass, so a 1/6/4, to a 5/7 or A7 with a passing tone of an F sharp, which is a dominant function, as we know, which then comes back to the D with arpeggiation in the bass, which is the tonic. As you can see, it is tonic, subdominant, dominant, tonic. 1, 4, 5, 1. So fa mi re do fa so do, tonic, subdominant, dominant, tonic. You can see it occur. All right, the next line. First, we can figure out what kind of cadence that is. up here, what just ended. Now it went do, fa, sol, do, do, and here it goes so, fa, mi, re, do. So the melodic line ends in do. So this would be a perfect, authentic cadence. Goes to tonic. Next is an anacrusis into the next phrase, because that was one phrase, with a C sharp 7th, because you have the arpeggiation going down a sequence to the C sharp. So C sharp, E, and G. So it actually is C sharp diminished 7. With that B on that first note, I told you on how the B, because it's in 6/8, means something. So the A's are passing tones that come down to D major again, with a G sharp as a passing tone. And then 5, 7, 6 again with A 7th with the E in the bass, B passing tone, to the D, the 1 chord. Then the C sharp diminished again, C sharp 7th. Oh, and it's only half diminished because the 7th isn't, the 7th didn't make it fully diminished. It's not a minor 7. So then it comes back to the D chord, the 1, with a passing tone of the brace notes and the G, and then goes to an A7 because it has the G up here in the melodic line, with an arpeggiated A in the bass, goes right back to D. And that would then cause it to be its own phrase again, right from the caesura, which is the railroad tracks, and it goes 1, 5, 1. So that would be an authentic cadence. Now the melodic line goes mi, do. So it ends on do, which means it is perfect, authentic cadence again. That is the first Mozart piece. This is the second Mozart piece, and we will do an analysis by an explanation because I had already sung everything and took the time to analyze it myself. First off, we notate that we are in G major. We can see that clearly by the first chord of the octave G's in the bass, a B to a D in the tenor line, I'm going to call it, and then the G, B, and then the top D in the first measure. So the first measure is clearly the 1 chord G, G major. Second one, it goes up to A in the bass and then is trilling with C's and D's in the tenor, and goes F sharp, G, A, B. Now, if you know chords, it's A, D, Fis. That is chord 5 in G. So it is its second inversion, so it's 5, 6, 4, but I called it the 7 because of all these C's in the tenor line. It is D, Fis, A, and Cis, or C, just C natural, with a G and a B as a passing tone. So that's why I put D7/A. Next line, it is again D7, but with F sharps in the bass, and then A and D in the tenor line. It's just reversing roles with the C's and the soprano. This is also good ways to avoid parallel fifths and parallel octaves by having the parts of the chord sung by different parts at different times. How if soprano in the second measure focuses on F sharp, the tenor focuses on the C and the D, and the basses focus on the A. In the next measure, the tenors are focusing on the A and the D, the basses are focusing on the F sharp that the soprano was, and the sopranos are now on the C's, focusing on there that was in the tenor part. So it does its own crossing, which really works for not having parallels and for just interesting choral music, or music altogether. So it's D7 with F sharp in the bass, which then leads back to G. Almost looks exactly like the first measure. This is one whole phrase, these 4 measures, and it is a authentic cadence because it goes 5-1, but because the soprano ends on mi, it is an imperfect authentic cadence in IAC. Down to the next line. So the last line was G major. Now it goes to G major still, but with B in the bass rather than the tonic. It's mi in the bass. So it's G over B, chord 1-6. Then it goes to C, G, E, which also has it's the C in the bass, and then A and E, which, oh, I was incorrect by this. It is just a 4 chord rather than a 2-7-6. You can do both ways because later on in the measure it does become a 2-6. So you could do 4-7 to a 2-6, which is all subdominant, which is the main focus of the teaching, is what you actually hear, because it goes tonic to subdominant to dominant, as you'll see, to the D major, back to the tonic. So, re, do, fa, sol, do, fa, sol, do. It's another phrase with a couple passing tones in there. Whether it's a 4 or 2-6, it has that subdominant function, which then it goes 5-1, which means it's on authentic cadence, and we can figure out that it lands on do in the soprano, so it is then a perfect authentic cadence, a PAC. To the next line. We come down here to the D's in the bass with Fis and A going back and forth up here, and A, D, C sharp. So the first beat or 8th note is because it's in 3/8. So the first one is D major easily. The second one, you can consider it D major, but it has that C sharp. You can call it a passing tone, but I'd rather call it D major 7th, because the C sharp is sharpened. It's not just D 7th, because the C sharp is not in the actual key, because there's only one sharp, because we're in the key of G. So we call it a major 7th. It would be D7, it was D to C natural. But since it's a C sharp, it's major 7th. And then this last chord is D in the bass, and the G, B, D B, so it's a G chord with D in the bass, so it's a 1-6-4 because so's in the bass. So it's 5 major 7 to 1-6-4, which is all a dominant function, coming down again to the almost exact same measure. Again, I believe it's the exact same measure. So back to a dominant function with D major 7, G over D, over to another, clearly again 5 chord, the D chord, to another D chord, which is its own phrase again. It's dominant function. This whole phrase is a dominant function, giant dominant function. And it comes down to a half cadence, because half cadence is any cadence that ends or another chord goes to a 5 chord. Now, even though it's a 5 going to a 5, that is nonetheless going to a 5. So it is a half cadence. So the next line, after we were with the D in the last measure, it comes down to become 3 trebles, 3 treble clefs to be, so watch that out, watch what clef you're in, that helps with notes. E.g. C natural, which is C and over the E in the bass, or the E the lowest note, and I call this C7 to explain all the B's in the tenor and soprano line. Now, with the basses, the D and the Fis are passing tones. This then happens again to a different sequence. It just goes down a minor third in the top 2 parts. The first note goes down my third, the other notes go down a major third. This one goes down major third and a minor third from the G to the E. Then this stacked on top of each other is A minor over C, which creates the 2-7 chord, or a subdominant function. So it goes from subdominant to, again, subdominant. Back to a dominant function, which is D7 because of the C's in here, with a few passing tones going upward in the melodic line. Now it comes back to tonic, so it's subdominant, subdominant, tonic, dominant, tonic, subdominant, subdominant, dominant, tonic. So this then ends on Do, which would make it a perfect authentic cadence for this line. This is another phrase. There are 4 measured phrases. This is a very common sight in music, 4 measured phrases. Ending on this last line, we see that we have C, G, E, just on the bass and tenor line. The sopranos are done, and we ended with perfect authentic. So that section of it ends in a perfect authentic, and then you hear these 2 parts continue on with the 4 chord, and then I said 4 add 9 because of the D in the tenor part, because it's a C chord. It could also be a suspended 2 or a sus2, so C sus2, which then resolves to C, but I'd rather call it an add 9 because the C in the bass, the D is a 9th above it. Then it comes down to C over E, and then C7 add 9 over E in this, or another subdominant function, to the 2-6 with an A and a C because it's inverted, So subdominant, 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 coming up to a dominant D major. It's in the bass now, so watch out. D major 7, D, F, C, C, D, and you see how it's not D major 7, it's just a D, it's D major with a 7th, but it's not D major 7th, because D major 7th would be a C sharp, but it's not a C sharp, it's just a C natural. 5/7 then goes to 1 in the tenor part, going to, because that is then the melodic line, the tenor part, because the sopranos have dropped out. So they end on Do, which makes it a perfect, authentic cadence. And the basses also end on Do, so that just adds, solidifies that perfect, authentic cadence there. This entire last phrase goes subdominant, 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 dominant, tonic. Re, do, fa, 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 so, do. And that's the end of the Mozart piece. Thank you.